Hey guys, welcome back to Black Ambassadors of Change. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. This week we have another great episode for you. We have part 2 of Black History Month's great African American innovators in all fields. We're going to touch on another full, great, impactful African American and how they impacted not just the United States, but the entire world. Stay tuned. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. See you soon. So we have some great people this week. First off, for you car lovers, we have a great African American, C. Patterson. I don't know if you ever heard of this guy, but he was the first African American car manufacturer. So this episode, I guarantee you, will inspire you because this guy was born into slavery. And he was born to parents that were slaves also. And a few decades after slavery, he was able to partner with a gentleman by the name of Lowe's after he became a blacksmith and an apprentice to start his own car company, carriage company, which eventually blossomed into his own car company. Eventually, he bought out Lowe's and established his own car company. I just wanted to make a point that if you notice, he bought out his partner. He didn't have his partner buy him out, unlike a lot of entrepreneurs these days. So I hope by promoting this impactful African American that a lot of us will feel inspired. Stay tuned. Take a look.
Today we're going to be talking about Charles Richard Patterson. Charles Richard Patterson was born in Virginia on a plantation in 1833. His father and mother, Charles and Nancy Patterson, were also slaves. Not much is known about Charles's childhood, but many believe he acquired his skills of blacksmith from working with the plantation's blacksmith. Charles would soon escape from slavery and head north. He would venture through the mountains of the slave state of West Virginia and eventually made it to the northern state of Ohio. He would soon settle in Greenfield, Ohio in 1861. Sometime after, Charles would work as a blacksmith for the carriage building business Dines and Simpson. Most agree that Charles would work for room and board within the city. Charles would work for the best-known wagon and coach builder, and soon would move up to foreman of the company due to his top-quality work. He would go on to marry Josephine Utz in 1865 and have 5 children within the next 15 years. It is unclear if Josephine Utz was white or mulatto. Mulatto was a racial term used to classify a person of black and white mixing. Some African Americans at the time were so light they would pass as white or be classified as such due to skin tone. Josephine and Charles would have 3 daughters and 2 sons. In 1873, Charles would go into partnership with a white man, J.P. Lowe, another Greenfield-based carriage manufacturer. Lowe would join Charles to produce a very successful carriage building business over the next 20 years. This business was called Lowe's and Patterson. In 1893, Charles would buy out Lowe's shares and became owner of the company. Charles would go on to reorganize the company and form C.R. Patterson and Sons Company. He would name it this to include his second son, named after the famous abolitionist and social reformer, Frederick Douglass. Charles' son, Frederick Douglass Patterson, would go on to graduate from high school and attend the Ohio State University. He would also become the first African American to ever play on the Ohio State football team. Charles' youngest son, Samuel, would stay with his father to run the family business, which he was a particularly important part of. Frederick would leave Ohio State to teach in Louisville, Kentucky. He would soon return to Ohio due to his brother's worsening sickness, leading to his brother Samuel passing in 1899. Frederick would move back to Ohio, leaving his teaching job to assist with the family business. The company would go on to build 28 types of horse-drawn vehicles and employed 35 to 50 employees, with 10 to 15 working on highly successful ranges of carriages. These carriages would sell from $120 to $150 each, and the doctor's buggy was the most popular. These vehicles were sold throughout the South and the Midwest. Charles Patterson would be awarded patents. A patent, for those who might not know, is an exclusive right granted for an invention, which also gives the owner legal right to exclude others from using the invention. The awarded patents are as followed: a trill coupling in 1887, a furniture caster in 1891, a vehicle dash in 1905, a combination ladder in 1910, and a buggy top in 1911. This successful business plan would not last long as the automobile was approaching quickly. In 1910, Charles would die, leaving the company to his son Frederick. Frederick was vice president and an early member of the National Negro Business League, started by Booker T. Washington. He was also well educated and had a good business sense. Frederick saw the change happening in the transportation world, and he was aware of the assembly line taking place north in Detroit, just a couple hours from the company. Frederick would initiate the conversion from carriage vehicle business into an automotive manufacturer. He would first start by offering interior repairs for upholstery and paint. He would then offer engine services and electric repair services soon after. C.R. Patterson and Sons Company would soon develop and produce their own vehicles. Their first car debuted in 1915 and would be sold for $850 with a 4-cylinder Continental engine. The vehicle was offered in touring configuration and roadster configuration. The vehicle used custom parts and off-the-shelf parts, featuring demountable rims, electric lighting, split windshield, electric starter, floating rear axles, and cantilever springs. This vehicle cost more than the Ford Model T, and many customers even stated it was a more luxurious ride with every creature comfort the modern man could want. The Patterson Greenfield also cost less than more luxurious companies with almost the same features, such as Cadillac, a 40 horsepower motor, and a chassis that could top out at 50 miles per hour. Marketing to regional customers in the Midwest and Ohio, as well as to African Americans through black publications, this would spread the message of the new car with haste. Even though the craftsmanship and refinement was there, the company never had the manufacturing funds, mass, or capability that such companies as Ford had. Making somewhere around 150 cars, competing against bigger companies, and producing a mid-class luxury vehicle would prove extremely hard. Scaling the company would be difficult, and in 1918, just 3 years later, the company would focus on repairing vehicles and halted producing vehicles. Soon after, Frederick would reorganize the company and named it Greenfield Bus Body Company. Essentially, Frederick would turn the company back into what his father produced, a carriage producer, one that did not build motors nor drivetrains, just bodies. These bodies would be placed over existing Ford, Dodge, and International chassis. The company would use $50,000 of investments, supplying school bus bodies throughout the Midwest and South. At this time, there was a huge demand for school buses, and Frederick would fill that niche for school boards in Kentucky and Southern Ohio. The company also built custom coaches for regional and local businesses. From 1922 to 1923, the company would produce 500 bodies of various types of vehicles. Annual sales were $150,000, and it is said that the company even shipped bodies to Haiti as well. This success would not last long, with the Great Depression settling in on America. Economic downfall and the stock market crashing would spell bad news for the company. Sales would fall within this time period, and obtaining loans were near impossible. Frederick would go on to marry Betty Postal and have 2 kids. In 1901, they would marry in Hopkinsville, Kentucky, and have 2 children. In 1903, the oldest, Frederick Postal Patterson, was born in Greenfield, Ohio. He would go on to study at Ohio State and then join his father, Frederick, in the family business. Frederick supported many black businesses and served as Greenfield's delegate to the annual Ohio Republican Party caucus. Being interested in politics, he was very eager to push the Ohio black vote for the Republican presidential candidate, Warren G. Harding. Frederick was also a member of the Foraker Club and took interest in Booker T. Washington. He was also Episcopalian and served as master of Greenfield's Masonic Lodge No. 17. The company would also be mentioned in the Horseless Age issue in the very old civil rights publications called The Crisis. Unfortunately, Frederick would pass away in 1932. He would leave the business to his son, Postal. The company would go on to struggle once more and reorganize as Gallia Body Company. The company would soon move to Gallipolis, Ohio, due to not being able to raise money in Greenfield. This would only last for 1 year, as financial support and lack of local workers' experience would take a toll on the company. The company would close in 1939 after 74 years of operation. The only products that we know still exist are commercial vehicles, storm buggies, which featured stationary sloped whips, which let drivers sit inside and whip horses without elements affecting them, carriages, and rural delivery buggies. These all exist.
Hey guys, so this warms my heart right here because this young lady, Kizzmekia Corbett, is making Black history as we speak. This young lady is one of the scientists who were instrumental in finding the COVID vaccine. She worked with Moderna to come up with this, her and her team, to come up with a vaccine that will save millions of lives. So I hope you're inspired once again. I know I said that before, but I have to tell you, with all the negativity going on in this world, I think our young Black people are really shining a light on the dismal darkness that came over our land in the last few years. But stay tuned and feel inspired.
According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, more than 6.5 million Americans have now received their first dose of the vaccine against the coronavirus. It's a number that will be growing every day, though it's well behind what public health experts had been hoping to see. Along with manufacturing and distribution issues, public health officials are concerned about millions of Americans who are resistant to taking the vaccine. To address that, some of those officials are shining a light not just on the science behind the shots, but on the scientists who help bring the vaccines to fruition. When the president paid a visit to the National Institutes of Health last March, the leads at the Vaccine Research Center explained their life-saving mission.
Y-shaped proteins that will bind.
The key to it, a 34-year-old doctor named Kizzmekia Corbett.
I was just there telling the task force about the work that we've been doing.
2 weeks later, Dr. Corbett's team began the first stage of clinical trials.
We have taken a lot of the knowledge that we have gained over the last 6 years and applied it to a fairly revolutionary vaccine platform in collaboration with Moderna.
That vaccine rolled out within 10 months.
The vaccine teaches the body how to fend off a virus because it teaches the body how to look for the virus. By basically just showing the body the spike protein of the virus, the body then says, oh, we've seen this protein before. Let's go fight against it. That's how it works.
For a lot of people, seeing you as the person who is part of this process, there's a trust factor.
To be honest, I didn't realize the level of impact that my visibility might have. I do my work because I love my work.
Dr. Corbett's interest in science began at an early age, but one opportunity made a key difference. She attended the University of Maryland, Baltimore County as a Meyerhoff Scholar, an aggressive program that mentors minorities and women in science. Graduates include Surgeon General Jerome Adams. Was she someone who's going to make it all along?
She was definitely going to make it in life.
Dr. Freeman Hrabowski has been president there for nearly 30 years.
She had strong science background, but she also was very comfortable with people. We need more scientists who can connect to people. She could do that when she was 17 easily. What we do at UMBC is to support students of color, Black, but also students in general, to make sure they make it in science.
Only 18% of all students graduate with a STEM degree, according to the National Center for Education Statistics. Around 2% are Black.
It's important for those people to see people looking like them, like themselves, who can be involved. If it's about women or if it's about Blacks, because it shows that you've got people who understand what you've gone through.
Dr. Corbett and I have worked together for maybe 15 or 16 years, since she was in high school.
Dr. Barney Graham's not only Corbett's mentor, he's her boss.
When you recognize somebody has special qualities, you need to do things that can keep those other things out of the way and avoid some of the dismissiveness that often happens, not only to minority people, but to women.
And historically, that bias strikes not just professionals in the field, but those that they serve. Well, let's talk about the impediments to the trust.
I grew up in Birmingham. All of my life, I was hearing about the Tuskegee study.
The federally sanctioned Tuskegee experiment sought to examine the long-term effects of syphilis by letting infected black men go untreated with no regard to the suffering it caused.
How do you feel about being used as a guinea pig?
Well, I thought once he was pretty rough.
Another example, the special cells of Baltimore cancer patient Henrietta Lacks were taken without her explicit permission and were subsequently used in billions of dollars worth of medical research without compensation.
There are many other examples of supposedly objective scientists who were caring about everyone, who valued people of color less. It's a painful truth. And this is what's significant. When I say Kizzmekia Corbett is from a small town in North Carolina, a young woman of faith who understands the socio-cultural issues that we face, who knows what racism means, she gets all of that.
What's your message to people who are hesitant to take this vaccine?
Well, number one is that I get it. Number two is that to really take advantage of the level of transparency that we are attempting, even I haven't even seen before, such as FDA hearings and briefings being broadcast online and data coming out almost instantly.
And to try and address them.
And in one of those webinars,
fully,
Dr. Anthony Fauci gave her a ton of credit.
The vaccine that you're going to be taking was developed by an African-American woman. And that is just a fact. I mean, that is a fact.
A fact offering illumination to those often left in the dark.
She cannot be a hidden figure. She cannot be a hidden figure. She needs to be in textbooks. Little girls need to see her of all races. This is what's possible.
So another great African-American, this time in the field of entertainment, is Tyler Perry. Tyler Perry is currently making history. In case you haven't heard, Tyler Perry is officially the first African-American to own his own movie studio, which is major. Controlling our narrative is one of our biggest problems in advancing as a race of people. So kudos to Tyler Perry, and his journey has not been easy, and I hope by bringing his journey to you, you feel inspired. Take a look.
Emmett Perry Jr.'s childhood was so tough, he changed his name to Tyler Perry to distance himself from his father. He was taken advantage of for most of his life, but he has never let his past dictate his future. If this is your first time visiting our channel, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell to receive notifications. Here's the sad truth about Tyler Perry's life. Before he brought laughter to our lives as the character Medea, Tyler Perry grew up in New Orleans with a dad who was very physical with him. He told Oprah his childhood was like living in hell because he had to endure beatings, shouting, and a lot of name-calling. He would constantly use his imagination to escape his childhood by visualizing himself running and playing in a park. Tyler said as a child he would escape to that same park every time someone mistreated him. His mother, Maxine, was also mistreated by his father, and she tried to leave him several times. One day, she packed up Tyler and his 3 siblings in their Cadillac and drove to California. But when Tyler's dad reported the car stolen, his mom was pulled over and locked up. Tyler's dad and uncle picked them all up from California and drove them back to Louisiana. Tyler said his dad laid hands on his mom the entire ride home. One particular incident with his father involved a vacuum cord, resulting in 5 welts on Tyler's body. When his dad fell asleep, Tyler ran to his Aunt Jerry's house. From that day forward, his aunt took him everywhere and never left his side. As a kid, things weren't any better outside of the home. He was taken advantage of on several different occasions by both men and women. Those incidents left him confused and angry, but he was able to find an outlet. In 1991, he was watching Oprah on TV and heard the talk show host say that writing things down can be cathartic. So Tyler put pen to paper and filled a journal with letters to himself. These letters later turned into his first play, I Know I've Been Changed. The script was the start of his career, but the road to success wouldn't be easy. He used all $12,000 of his life savings to fund I Know I've Been Changed, and only 30 people showed up on opening night. From 1992 until 1998, every show he put on flopped, and he began running out of money. He worked a series of odd jobs to fund his projects, and when his money would run short and he couldn't pay rent, he would live on the streets. He even slept in his car for 3 months and spent some time in homeless shelters. His mom begged him to get a steady job, but he refused to give up on his dream. His luck finally changed in 2005 when he partnered with Lionsgate to produce Diary of a Mad Black Woman. He has made several films with the studio since then and has generated over $1 billion in ticket sales. After having so many doors shut on him in the entertainment industry, he opened his own movie studio in 2008. Situated south of downtown Atlanta, it sprawls across 330 acres. He later acquired Fort McPherson U.S. Army Base for $35 million to use as a production studio. Tyler Perry Studios not only serves as the backdrop for many of his films, but it also employs so many people in Atlanta. In 2009, Tyler's mom fell ill. He told Essence magazine he began drinking every night to help him fall asleep. After his mom passed away in December 2009, he continued his nightly ritual of drinking a big glass of Hennessy before bedtime. It wasn't until President Barack Obama visited his studio that he decided to kick his habit. After his mom passed away, Perry found out Emmett Sr. wasn't his biological dad. Things started to make so much sense to Tyler, and he said he finally understood why his dad hated him so much. But Tyler was ready to walk the path of forgiveness. He now sends his father a check every month, and he allows him to live in a beautiful mansion in Louisiana. After Tyler began opening up about his life story, Emmett Sr. sent a message to him through Tyler's brother. The message said, "If I had beat your one more time, you probably would have been Barack Obama." Tyler's living the life he has always dreamed of. As of 2019, his net worth is approximately $600 million. And he's the father of a boy named Amon, whom he shares with his longtime partner. Tyler's life story is all about forgiveness and perseverance. He's proof that with hard work and determination, the sky's the limit.
Hey guys, welcome back. So for our final candidate for Black History Month, for the person who've made an impactful move in their career or in the field they have chosen, is Danielle Luna. Danielle Luna was born in Detroit, and she wasn't from a wealthy family, but Danielle became the first Black supermodel. Danielle have a very interesting background, and before there was Naomi or Tyra or Beverly Johnson, there was Danielle. I know many of us have never heard of her, hence I'm trying to highlight her today. So here at Black Ambassador Change, we aim to educate you on things you may not have known or may not have been highlighted as much as there should be. So take a look at Danielle's story.
Luna was born originally named Peggy Ann Freeman in Detroit, Michigan on August 31st, 1946. Her family was far from wealthy, and her parents worked hard to provide as her father, Nathaniel, worked for Ford Motor Company, and her mother, Peggy, worked as a receptionist at the YWCA. Danielle Luna was the first Black model to really change things, as she was able to overcome deep prejudice in a time of racial violence and complications to land a stellar modeling career that would help pave the way for future non-white females trying to succeed in the fashion industry. The young dreamer and fantasist invented her alter ego during her teenage years for her own self-makeover. She was described by a relative as being a very weird child, even from birth, living in a wonderland, a dream. After school hours, Danielle started to work as an actress doing small parts in Detroit's repertory theaters. In 1964, David McCabe, famous for his photography, discovered Luna in the streets of Chicago. He recalled being stunned after his first sighting of Luna wearing her kid's school uniform. David described Luna as being tall and slender and having the most incredible bone structure. He was so astounded by Luna's beauty that he invited the 18-year-old to New York. After Luna's arrival in New York, she was introduced to Nancy White, a well-known editor for the Harper's Bazaar magazine during the 1960s. White was easily amused by Luna's unique image, and so she had Luna sketched by an illustrator, and in no time the result was released on the cover of the January 1965 edition of Harper's Bazaar, the first ever to feature a black model. After only just a short time of being in New York, Luna seemed to have been getting into trouble rather quickly. According to an article published in Time magazine, and I quote, "A month after hitting New York, she married a young actor, divorced him after 10 months, and now will not even give his name." Luna was also a very controversial celebrity when it came to the Civil Rights Acts of the 1960s. She was hesitant in interviews when asked on her opinions on the historic movement, and in one interview stated, "The Civil Rights Movement has my greatest support, but I don't want to get involved racially," she once said. In another 1968 interview, when asked if she hoped that her success might open more doors for African American women, she replied, "If it brings about more jobs for Mexicans, Chinese, Indians, Negroes, groovy. It could be good, it could be bad, I couldn't care less." Remarks like these did nothing to support the minorities facing segregation in America, and for the remainder of her career, Luna remained determinedly disengaged. Remarkably for a rookie, Luna had skipped modeling's apprenticeship stage of endless castings and rejections, and had come straight to the top. Despite Luna's early successes in America, she was forced to relocate to Europe, where at the time racial segregation against African Americans was not as severe and she was more in demand. After leaving America, Luna was soon in David Bailey's London studio, where he photographed her for the cover of the March 1966 edition of British Vogue. It was the first time the fashion magazine had featured an African American female on its cover. The photograph was Luna covering her whole face with her hand, except for her boldly outlined eye. Reportedly, that shot was chosen so as to not offend the magazine's regular audience. At the time, this historic cover went unnoticed by the African American press back home, and who instead focused more on the first black female featured on the cover of the American version of Vogue magazine, who was Beverly Johnson. As the years passed by, Luna went on to pursue an acting career starring in many of Andy Warhol's films, including Camp and Fellini Satyricon. Luna's popularity soon allowed her to be photographed by people such as William Klein, Richard Avedon, Helmut Newton, William Claxton, and the legendary David Bailey. Luna's success had also brought her many friends whose names are very well known, such as Mick Jagger, Mia Farrow, Julie Christie, and Yul Brynner. Although fame had brought Luna a great amount of success, it also brought with it many problems. Luna was soon at the peak of her career, heading on a downward spiral as she began to rely on drugs. Luna confessed in an interview that she had been taking LSD and stated, "I think it's great. I learned that I like to live, I like to make love, I really do love somebody, I love flowers, I love the sky, I like bright colors, I like animals. LSD also showed me unhappy things, that I was stubborn, selfish, unreasonable, mean, that I hurt other people." Eventually, her drug habits had affected her work life to the extent that Luna had begun to start dissing bookings and blowing off interviews. Beverly Johnson, Luna's fellow black model, complained about Luna's odd behavior, stating, "She didn't have a hard time, she made it hard for herself." By this time around, Luna's career had begun to decline drastically. After years of drug abuse, Luna died of an accidental heroin overdose at the age of 32 on May 17, 1979.
I hope you liked the show today, and you tell your friends, tell your family. Don't forget to tune in next week and check out another great video from Black Ambassadors of Change. Don't forget, during the week, we have little short clips, little inspirational clips that we post. So don't forget to check out our site during the week. Again, thank you for watching and see you next week. Peace.